custodians of the unceded lands, skies, and waterways in which we are all dialing in from today. Here at VicHealth HQ, I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and pay my deepest respects to ancestors and elders, past, present, and emerging, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us here today. So just some housekeeping notes before we begin today's session. Please ask all your questions today through slido.com. We'll be monitoring Slido for all the questions coming in, and you can use the event code Food Hub. So it's one word, capital F, capital H. This will also be featured at the bottom of every slide if you haven't had a chance to note this down. You can ask a question on Slido, and you can also like questions to increase their popularity. Please only use the Zoom Q&A function for any technical issues on today's session. And please note this online briefing session will be recorded, and a link will be available at a later date on the VicHealth website. So without further ado, we'd now like to play a short video to set the scene for today's session, and we hope you enjoy.
Think about the food you buy and eat. Where do you get it from? Who grows it, transports it, disposes of it? What about the people you eat with? How does your food create jobs in the community and enable healthy lifestyles? We have a vision. To reimagine how we do food. The places and spaces we grow it, sell it. The way we think, learn and talk about it. We see neighbourhoods filled with people coming together through food, buying, selling, sharing recipes, making new friends, learning new skills. Vibrant spaces that ensure fair prices for farmers and affordability for everyone. Where kids learn to garden, cook and close the loop. Familiar places for young people to discover possibilities and purpose, not just pumpkins. Places where anyone and everyone can come to celebrate local, fresh flavours and learn more about each other's cultures. Healthy food hubs brimming with productivity, potential and people. This is the food future we can see. What about you? Disposes of it.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. We might pop the link to the video in the chat so you can have a look at that at a later time as well. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to the Executive Manager of the Future Healthy Group, Sarah Lowe, who will now take you through the background of VicHealth and Future Healthy. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Veronica. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'll give a little bit of a background about who VicHealth is and what we do in the Future Healthy Group. So we're actually the Victorian Health Promotion Foundation, or just known as VicHealth, and we exist to create a healthier Victoria, one where everyone can live a healthier and happier life where they thrive. So we actually promote good health and the prevention of chronic disease. And everything that we do has world-class intervention that we create, important research we lead, the public campaigns we deliver, and the expert insights that we share. We're leading change and are determined to make a real lasting impact on the health and wellbeing of all Victorians. We're currently part of, in our last 3 years of our 10-year action agenda, and we've reflected on the difficult last couple of years that we've all faced as Victorians, where some communities were harder hit than others. We actually saw the toil and all the impacts of the pandemic over the last couple of years, especially on our young people, and particularly those who already experienced structural barriers to good health before the pandemic. So late last year, we actually launched Future Healthy, which the team that you see here are part of, and the Future Healthy team, or the Future Healthy group, is actually made up of 3 particular domains, or what we call domain teams. So the first one is the active community and sport, the social connection and mental wellbeing, and the healthy and sustainable food systems, who have created this wonderful program that you're all seeing and hearing about now. So in regards to VicHealth, sorry, you've gone forward. That's okay. So part of Future Healthy, what we're doing is that we're investing 45 million over the next 3 years, which is very exciting. And you would have seen of late, and especially since yesterday, there was a fair bit of media as we launched the Big Connect, and we launched that I think it was earlier this year, and we've just announced the 27 partners that who are sharing in that money for over 100,000 social connections, which is so important. So you'll get to hear more about that. Jumpstart is also part of one of the 3 major investments, and we're just going through the assessment period of Jumpstart now. Those are the smaller bits of funding to 50,000. And of course, you may have seen one of our new partners in RecLink for activating underutilised spaces. So that's one of our domains there. And that really is part of that whole move the dial. And of course, since the activation of Future Healthy, or how we created this, we've spent many hours and many sessions connecting with our stakeholders, especially with the young people, and hearing what they want to get out of this particular strategy of VicHealth. So the information has been absolutely integral as we created how we drive our investments and thinking and advocacy of efforts of every step of the way, including these large-scale investments. So as I mentioned, Move the Dial just finishes off the three parts of the Future Healthy. So what's Move the Dial? This is why we're all here. So like I mentioned, with those 3 particular areas, we're now in the healthy, sustainable food systems. So again, we've listened to the young people, but also to our partners and stakeholders. We've worked for many years, and those who will start working with us, and hopefully that's some of you people. You told us what we needed and the way we needed to rethink about the way we delivered funding. So really, we've gone down a partnership model. So investments are needed to be more targeted, more strategic, more meaningful capacity, and build on the basis and the needs of the organisations that we're working with, instead of guessing what you all need. So, and supporting you to continue delivering the impact of the funding cycle. So we're really excited to present the Move the Dial. I know my team has worked so hard. I've only been here 13 weeks, and led by our manager Deepa with the team that you're meeting today. Couldn't be more delighted than to officially launch the Healthy and Sustainable Food Systems Hub to support more Victorians enjoy culturally appropriate, fresh and environmental sustainable food. So hopefully you've got lots of questions. We really look forward to seeing what you all come up with, and who we're going to partner with coming up very soon. And I may just hand over back to Veronica.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for providing that great background summary. I would now like to present the manager for the Healthy and Sustainable Food Systems team within Future Healthy, Deepa Jalapalan, who will now take us through our vision for a healthy and sustainable food system for Victoria and some key funding information. Welcome, Deepa.
Thank you so much, Veronica, and thank you, Sarah, as well. And thank you all for being here. I'd also like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm calling from today, the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also acknowledge that we have so much to learn from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in creating healthy and sustainable food systems. So we know in Victoria, like it is for much of the world, it is a privilege to be able to afford healthy food. It is a privilege to afford environmentally sustainable food, and it is a privilege to be close to food that is part of your cultural practice. It is also a privilege to be able to engage in your local food system and play an active role in it. The last 2 years, many Victorians started to think about their food, where it came from, the cost of it, planning ahead more so than they had before. This was more of a concern for some households over others. Our research during the pandemic showed that 1 in 4 people were turning to unhealthy food in order to save money. Continued shocks to our food supply have made accessing and enjoying fresh food more difficult for more communities. Around 1.2 million children across Australia and their households are relying on food relief. We saw all this unravelling and knew if we wanted to move the dial, we had to act to find long-term solutions to this complex problem. Victoria should be and can be a state where everyone can enjoy healthy, culturally appropriate local food. So to determine how to do this, we needed to listen to those who face countless barriers to accessing these foods, especially the young people in these communities. As part of the community listening phase of Future Healthy, we also asked specific questions around food and the issues that young people were facing. We heard that suburbs were dominated by unhealthy food, making healthy options harder for young people to get to or being out of their budget. That young people didn't know about the opportunities to connect to their local food system, or if they did know about it, those spaces didn't seem particularly inviting to their age group. That the nutrition, education, and cooking classes they saw often focus on Western foods, failing to connect with young multicultural and First Nations people. It was clear to us if we needed to move the dial, we needed to aim big, and we needed to do it with all of you. So here we are. I'll move the dial, which we'll be talking about today. The primary goal of this investment is to increase access to locally sourced, healthy, culturally appropriate food for more Victorians, particularly those who usually experience greater barriers to accessing these types of foods. We also want to increase opportunities for young people with diverse lived experience to engage in the food system, advocate for better local food systems, and find meaningful employment in the sector. We want to support local food producers and enterprises to be thriving businesses, and we want to increase opportunities for communities to celebrate and showcase their own food culture, passing them on to future generations and for other communities to learn about each other's food cultures as well. So to do this, we'll be investing in food hubs and a food systems traineeship program. Food hubs are likely a term many of you have heard before, and so we're talking about future healthy food hubs. So what are we envisioning when we say that? These hubs are physical spaces. They could be in a market stall, they could be outside a community centre, they could be on a farm. There's lots of people there, there's beautiful produce set out that reflects the community that it's there. These are fruits and vegetables that they want to cook and share. They can buy it at a price they can afford and at a price that supports the livelihood of the person who grew and harvested it. In this space, there could be community gardens, there could be cooking classes and activities for young people to connect with the local food system. There could be weekly dinners where people come together to share and connect with each other. The activities and programming that are offered at this space will be wanted and asked for the community and be designed by them. Each space will look different to the next. As we know, one local area is not a cookie cutter of another. So these hubs should also be unique to represent the people, culture, and food of that community, particularly the young people of this area, and providing them the opportunities and pathways into the food sector, to be engaged in the food system and not need to hold a level of privilege to access these opportunities. The Food Systems Traineeship Program will do just that. So this will be paid employment where young people will be employed in these hubs. While they are employed here, they will undergo training around advocacy, communication, and community mobilisation. They will also learn about the food system in all its complex and nuanced ways. The young people participating in the traineeship across Victoria will have opportunities to connect and work together to collectively advocate for more sustainable and equitable food systems in Victoria, but also for their local areas. While the training will be provided and organised by VicHealth, we'll be looking to you to nominate young people in your area to participate in the program. We know from the conversations we've had with so many of you that you share the same vision for localised, equitable food systems. So we want to hear from you. What would a hub look like in your area, based on what you know about your community and your local food system? Which network or connections would you use to identify those young people who could be part of the traineeship program? The funding we have on offer is $150,000 to $750,000 in total for each hub to deliver over 3 years, depending on where you are starting from and how established your hub or space already is. You'll be provided with business management support and training to be a financially sustainable organisation, support from the leading youth organisations in Victoria to ensure that your workplaces are ones that young people thrive in, and opportunities to work collectively with other food hubs and learn from each other. The hubs that you apply to establish will be in regional Victoria or in the growth corridor of Melbourne. The growth corridor councils we have identified are Wyndham, Melton, Hume, Whittlesea, Mitchell, Casey or Cardinia. Unfortunately, we're unable to accept applications from other Metro Melbourne councils. We don't want you to miss out, so please keep in mind that applications close at 2 p.m. on the 16th of May. Thank you so much for coming along to this session, and I look forward to hearing all your questions, and I hope I'm able to provide some helpful answers to support you in the process of this application. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deepa. We've got quite a bit of time left, so we've got about 40 minutes now where I'd like to officially open our Q&A session, and Deepa and I will answer your questions coming through Slido. I can see there's quite a few coming through, so keep them coming and we'll kick it off now. So first question, we can see there are a number of questions coming through around, I guess, asking about the specific LGAs and their eligibility. So we'll just answer them all as a collective now. So Deepa, I might ask you this one if it's all right. What LGAs are available? I know you just mentioned them. And how did we choose these essentially?
Thanks, Veronica. And yeah, I can see that there's a lot of questions around locations. So it's great to hear that there's so much interest. So we'll be funding food hubs in the regional and rural Victoria and the growth corridor councils that I mentioned. So just to repeat, Wyndham, Melton, Hume, Whittlesea, Cardinia, Casey and Mitchell. When we talk about the areas that in which a food hub can be delivered, we are referring to the LGA. We know that these areas have faced their own unique set of barriers to accessing healthy, culturally appropriate food, and we hope this investment will support in dismantling some of those barriers. And we also know that in metro communities, there's also been massive issues around accessing food. We hope to find other ways to connect and work with you in the coming years, but this investment is particularly for those areas. So unfortunately, we'll be unable to provide funding or accept applications outside of these local government areas. Back to you, Veronica.
Thanks, Deepa. I'm just going to grab the next question, which I think I'm happy to answer. What do you mean by an existing hub? So in the grant application, you will notice that you will be asked to detail whether you have a new or existing food hub. And I guess the way we've identified existing food hubs are that they are community-led spaces in local areas where food is sold to the community. These sites can be permanent or pop-up, and food hubs can vary in how they look depending on the community's needs. So this is really up to you guys knowing your communities best, and there's no kind of one size fits all. They're all going to look really differently. Food hubs can exist in fresh food markets, for example, community gardens, as Deepa mentioned, shop fronts, community kitchens, parks, outdoor public spaces, or single or multi-story buildings. So they're just a few examples of how food hubs can look. I hope that clarifies that question. If not, feel free to pop in Slido as well. So the next question coming through is, I'll throw this one to you, Deepa. Can you clarify what the funding can and can't be used for?
Sure, I can do that. And we might pull up the slide if possible that answers this, because it might be easier than me explaining it word for word. So I'll let that question come up first. Great, thank you. So the categories for funding, what funding you can use, this funding for, are outlined on page 8 to 10 of the grant guidelines. So we're prioritising funding towards 3 main features of a food hub. And this is because we've understood the scope of what grants are already out there, and what we understand from speaking to you, people who, as people who work in the food system, what would be the most helpful. So community programming, so the costs associated with supporting the food hub to meet its overall goals of being responsive to community needs. For example, costs associated with developing engaging programming for the local community, such as running cooking classes, establishing community gardens, etc. Wages for the trainees. So we mentioned that, that as part of the traineeship, there'll be 2 young people working at each food hub in each year. So this is their wage for that year. And a food hub coordinator to essentially run the food hub and also manage the trainees. And then there's also partnerships and capacity building. So the costs associated with building capacity and partnerships with food hub stakeholders, including farmers, producers, suppliers, to help them facilitate the local community being able to access culturally appropriate and environmentally sustainable food. So this is partnering with them, where they're supporting these food producers so that they're able to produce the food that you're able to sell in the food hubs. We understand that people might have, and we hope that you may also have other streams of funding coming in, so then you would use them for the other things that you need to run your food hub. And you can see that there's other things that we will also fund in the following on from this in the grant guidelines. And there are limits, and those limits aren't flexible. We do need for you in your application to stick to those limits, but we understand that you might have other funding sources that can support you in funding other parts of your food hub that you would need funding for. I hope that answers the question, but please let us know if you need further information on that.
Thanks, Deepa. Just a few questions that have come through. We'll just touch back on the LGA question, as there's a few on there that are still coming up. If the hub is outside an eligible local government area but servicing the people in one of those growth areas that were mentioned, is that allowed or?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. And I know that it's quite tricky based on sometimes where you are located. It could be on a border. And we have had to set those boundaries. So if the food hub, it's based on where the food hub, the physical space is located. So the physical space needs to be in the eligible food hub for you to be able to apply for this.
Thanks for that. There's a question coming through about, can I apply as a consortium to deliver multiple food hubs? So I can take that one. So I guess we're looking for 1 physical space per application. So if you were to apply as a consortium, who would come together to deliver 1 hub in 1 location, you can apply together as a consortium. If you would be applying as a consortium to deliver multiple hubs across multiple locations, you still need to submit 1 application for each physical location. I hope that makes sense. All right. Next question. What kind of other support will be provided to hubs other than funding? Deepa, I'll throw this one to you.
Sure. So as I mentioned, there is a lot of support that we're hoping to provide you with, and we will be providing you with. As Sarah mentioned, this Move the Dial investment is a new form of funding that we're looking at and working with people and communities. So it's not just about the funding, it's about working with you to meet your needs and what you would like to achieve in being financially sustainable organizations as well. So we will be providing training and mentoring around business management. And that won't be a blanket training. It'll be understanding where the hubs are, where the organizations are, and understanding where the gaps are. So we make sure that the support we're giving is what you need, and we're not guessing what you need. We will also be supporting you with youth engagement training. So we understand for some people that have maybe been in the food system sector or are going into this world, maybe working with young people hasn't been always part of your work. So supporting you by linking you up with some great partners that we work with in the youth engagement space, so that the food hubs that you create can be workplaces where young people thrive, but also spaces that young people want to be a part of and be coming into and enjoying as well. The exact kind of support and the exact providers that we'll be using, I can't tell you yet because we're going through our own processes internally, but we'll be organising all of that. And in part of signing the agreement with us, you'll be required to participate in this training. And then there will also be forms of communities of practice where the hubs will be able to connect with each other and work together, learn from each other, collectively advocate as well for better food systems across Victoria.
Excellent. And I guess while we're on that note, Deepa, can you just tell us a little bit more about the traineeships? Who will deliver the training and what will the traineeships cover? Are they trainees full-time as well?
Sure, yeah, I'll go into that a bit more. So the traineeships are a one-year program. We chose 1 year's duration based on what we heard from young people, that they didn't want to get stuck into or trapped in certain work or educational commitments while they're figuring things out. So we went with a year. And so at this time, they'll be employed in the hub as a full-time employee. And they will also be engaging in various training modules, which we'll be partnering with certain organizations to do. Once again, I can't disclose exactly who that will be, as we are still figuring that part out and going through our own kind of process with that. So they will receive training. It will be full-time work with some extra pieces of work, and then there'll be opportunities for them to come together as well and work together as a group from all the trainees who will likely be located all across the state. So we will deliver that training. We will fund that and do all that work, and we'll work with the young people to make sure that the training is meaningful to them and what they hope to get out of this opportunity.
Excellent. Going through the next, I guess, popular question on the list. How does the amount differ across the 150K to the 750K? What are the criteria for each end of that? Do more established hubs get more? Are there extra deliverables?
Great, that's a very good question. So the reason we've put it as a range is because we understand that some hubs might already be doing a lot of the work that, the vision that I set and the objectives. You might be already really close to doing that. You just need a bit of extra funding, maybe to get, young people being trainees and various other things. So you may not need the full 750K over the 3 years. You might just need a smaller amount, being maybe 150. So it's for you to say, if you want to achieve the objectives that we've set out, what do you need to get there? And for you to kind of justify that and talk us through that in your budget template that we've provided and in your implementation plan, so that we know that, okay, you're kind of, you're close to getting there, but you just need a bit more funding, or you really need a lot of funding because you haven't done much of that work yet before, but there's a need in your community. So we're looking to you to provide that amount of what you will need based on where you are up to in the process. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Deepa. I'm going to the next most popular question on the list. So we've answered our traineeships full-time. They are for a year, I believe. So they're full-time for that year that they're employed from the Food Hub. I hope that answers that one. The next question is around, oh, there's another one on traineeships. Is that 4 full-time trainees per Food Hub? Do you want to answer that one, Deepa?
So the question was, it's 2 trainees so we've said for two trainees per year over 2 years. So each Food Hub will have 4 trainees.
Thanks for clarifying. And are there any age limits for the young people in terms of the trainees? Pretty sure it's 0 to 25?
Well, not 0.
No, it's
18 to 25.
18 to 25.
Well, Future Healthy works across the board of 0 to 25, and we hope that younger children and younger people are being able to come to the Food Hub with their parents. The traineeship age that we're looking for is 18 to 25.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, how will applicants need to demonstrate that the Food Hub will connect to that 50,000 shoppers locally and provide employment for 125 people? So a couple of the stats we had on the website.
Yeah, sure. So the stats that we had on the website were what we envisioned that we would hope a hub could do. So we don't know. They're not KPIs that we're setting for people. We looked at from the research what is out there in kind of similar food hubs across Australia and what were the numbers they were getting in terms of people coming through the door and purchases and employment. You will not be required to meet that quite high benchmark. There will be other elements of implementation, evaluation, monitoring that will happen. And we're going through that process of setting up that framework. But by the time you receive your funding, by the time you sign a contract, you'll know exactly what those expectations are.
Excellent, thank you. In relation to a new hub, can you please provide guidance about whether there is a period of community engagement around models and trialling different markets?
Yeah, so we would be hoping or expecting that the first kind of 6 months of, actually, I should say the last 6 months of this year would be spent on kind of that co-design and community engagement with the vision of starting something up early next year. So giving you that time to, we've asked for people to apply who already know their community and know that this hub is something that the community wants, but you probably will need more time to understand exactly what that food hub looks like through conversations and consultation with them. So we plan that for the kind of next 6 months after you receive funding, that you have that time and space to do that thinking and deep listening before you start something physical. And we understand that there might be a bit of trial and error and tweaking and learning from processes over the next few years while you're delivering your food hub. But we hope to do that in partnership with you and learn from you and listen and see how we can support you in that process as well.
Thank you. The next question I'm going to ask is, can the food hub have multiple locations within the same food hub? For example, a shop front, a garden, cooking clubs, all held in different locations under the same hub. So I believe it's just one location. Is that correct? Did you want to elaborate?
Yeah, right. So I would say it's one location. If there are kind of outreach things that are happening, which may happen over the course of, a couple of years, as long as you're able to meet your objectives or whatever you need to do within that one physical space, there might be extra activities that happen outside of that. But in the food hub application, it's about that one physical space that you're doing and the funding going to that one physical space. But we understand that you might have other funding that comes from other areas that you might use for other similar activities that may happen in other areas outside of that hub.
Thanks, Deepa. The next question is around, does the funding term reference in the budget template refer to per year or for the full length of the project being 3 years? I think it's the whole length of the 3 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I don't have the budget template right in front of me, but yeah, so that 150 to 750K is across delivery over the 3 years. So you'd be delivering till mid-2025. And we're asking you to kind of detail out what that budget would look like for that full period. And we understand there may be changes and things that may occur that we would work through with you, but being able to kind of articulate how you would like to spend that money over the course of the 3 years.
Thank you. The next question is, can infrastructure, rent and land be purchased with the funding?
No, this funding does not include rent or land or purchases. I mean, there's amount allowed for minor capital works and buying certain equipment that you might need, but those other things are not included in this funding opportunity.
Thanks for that question, Josh. Another question coming through, is it likely that additional funding will be available after the 3 years, or must food hubs reach a point of sustainability throughout this time frame? Great question.
I can't give an answer about that, unfortunately. It's pretty far away. We would hope that with the right support, the right training, the right connections, that you are able to become a financially sustainable organisation, but we understand that that may not happen. I can't, unfortunately, answer whether there will be funding provided by VicHealth. We are only thinking about the next 3 years in this funding cycle.
Excellent. I've got a question here from Jenny Jose. We're a tech-enabled team for farmer groups. How can we connect with interested food hubs or farmer groups? Is there any forum to connect with the food hubs?
Interesting question. I don't know if I can answer that one. There may be opportunities for people to kind of connect into the food hubs and provide, support and all of that. As I said, business management and youth engagement is our focus. I can't say that, we will be able to definitely facilitate anything. I suggest probably looking outside of this opportunity if that's the purpose that you're looking for.
Thanks, Deepa. There are a few questions here that we've already answered, but we can just reiterate some of the answers again. Carol said, hello, does the hub need to be located in one of the designated suburbs? We have an existing site nearby and have customers who are from the designated areas. So as Deepa touched on before, it does need to be in one of the designated local government areas or local government areas in regional Victoria. We won't be accepting any applications that are from outside of these designated areas that we've listed. Okay, next question. How will you ensure affordability and a fair price for producers? It's a great question.
That's a good question. And that's a question we actually posed to, well, I can't actually answer that because that's a question that we're asking you to answer in your application. So I'm not going to give you any answers. And we like to hear how you are doing that. We know that there are plenty of people, I can recognize and see names of people on this call who are doing that work already. And I know it's not an easy thing to do. We're not saying that you need to be the cheapest price. And we know that that's not the case. It's about that affordability for the consumer and the producer. So I can't answer that question, unfortunately, since it's actually an assessment question in our application form.
Thanks, Deepa. Can the food hubs be co-located with a food relief provider, even though this is not the focus of the funding?
Yes, it can be. That is, we understand that food hubs may be part or next to or run by organisations that are doing other work in the food system sector. So while the funding for this should not go to food relief, we understand that it might be next to the space or run by an organisation that's doing both.
We've got another question here about traineeships. If traineeships are delivered by VicHealth, how can the local community have input that is relevant for their region? So these traineeships are going to be not run by us, but by the food hub deliverers. So it's up to those organisations running the food hubs to choose the young people to be involved in the traineeship program. So they're going to be young people in your local area who will have an input for the food hub in your region. Do you want to add to anything to that?
Yeah, Veronica, I'll just add that, yes, so while we will run the training program itself, it's about you to nominating the young people from your area to be part of the program, and we'll be listening and learning to what they're coming with. So hopefully they're representing the voices of what your local food system needs. And, you know, we'll be looking that we hope that the young people that are coming to be part of the program are not just thinking about themselves, but they're thinking about their local community and what they can do to positively influence the food system. So we'll be listening and learning from them as well. And that will inform how the traineeship and the training is built as well. It won't be a blanket program that we're pulling off the shelf that everyone will have to do. It will be tailored to those who are part of it.
And I'll just clarify as well, because I think there's still a little bit of confusion whether we're running the trainee program or not. Another organisation is going to be delivering the traineeship program for you, but you'll be choosing the young people to participate in that. I hope that clarifies that confusion that just came through. Okay, next question. Can any regional or rural local government area apply, or are there designations for eligible regional and rural LGAs too? Only Metro has been detailed here. Yeah, good question. All regional and rural LGAs can apply. Thanks, Kez, for the question. Still a few questions there about clarifying locations for the food hubs. Renee from Southeast Community Links, thanks for your question. Can a proposal be put forward for Greater Dandenong? So as Deepa and I have mentioned, unfortunately only the locations that we've mentioned in that greater growth areas of Melbourne can apply, and we can't make any exceptions to any local governments not in that range. So apologies for that. Okay, just having a look at the questions. What frequency is expected for market operations? Good question.
Yeah, I can take that one, give you a break,
Thanks,
Veronica. Yeah, so it's based on community needs. So, you know, if you've got communities that want a food, like to be able to buy food every day, and you're able to provide that and you want to provide that, then that's what you would put forward in your application. But we understand that in some areas you may not have as many people coming through. So you may do it once a week, every fortnight, once or twice a week. Yeah, so what we're looking for in the application is to show that you understand what the community want, and hence you've chosen the duration or frequency that you have chosen.
Okay, there's a few questions around. A few more around food relief. What if the program we are running has benefits for food relief, but also for the local food system that meets your other objective?
So I would say that, yes, if there's a kind of byproduct of the work that is going towards food relief, that we can't control that. That's, if there's other if organizations are doing multiple projects and the food hub is one of them, then that is completely fine. But the primary objective of this funding, we need to see that link between the funding and the objectives that we set out around food, like affordability, selling food, doing all that community programming, and the young people as well. So we can't control the kind of unintended consequences of the programs that you run and what you do outside of the food hubs, but the food hubs need to meet the primary objectives that we've set out.
Thanks for clarifying, Deepa. Few questions around budget coming through as well. Does the 50K per traineeship include payroll tax, or would that need to come out of the 50K, thus bringing down the actual offered salary? Does that make sense? Payroll tax for the young people.
The extra kind of, so those would be extra, I would believe. So that would just be in your budget that, you set out that this is the actual cost of employing a young person at that wage level, with the extra kind of incidental things that would occur with that wage as well. So you could detail that as part of your budget template that you're providing us.
All right, some good questions coming through. A thriving food hub can only exist if it has a supply of healthy local produce. Is there scope for this funding to be used in a holistic way to support farming?
So I would say the third, I think that when we looked at that slide before, we talked about partnership building, so working with food producers. So there is an element of that funding that's there for you to support the food producers in your area to grow and grow locally, fresh produce that is culturally appropriate. So yes, so there is that funding amount that you have that we've, as one of the 3 priorities areas, is exactly why we've allocated that, because we understand that that is needed and you can't put a food hub somewhere where that supply isn't there. So yes, we are hoping to use this money in a holistic way.
Thanks, Deepa. Let's have a look. Got a question here about our food hub is currently under construction. We should have it completed in the 2nd year. In the 1st year, can we operate out of a temporary space?
I would, that's a very hard, very specific question to answer. I would put that detail in your application, justifying the space that you are going to be using, putting the temporary food hub in, showing that there's community need in that area for that hub to be located in that space, showing that's a space that people will use. But yeah, just please include that information in the application. It's kind of hard to answer that without knowing the full context as well.
Thanks, Deepa. And yeah, if you do have any kind of specific questions, you can always email us after the session, but we'll provide those details. Let's have a look. I think we've already answered this question, but I understand as an external provider will provide the traineeship program. Will VicHealth or an external organisation provide the business support / food hub management support?
So VicHealth will organise that and pay for that part, and we'll be using an external provider that we're going through a competitive process for procuring that person's services. Those specific services, and because we understand that at VicHealth we're not business management experts ourselves, so that's why we've looked elsewhere, and we'll be making those connections and coordinating that with the food hub.
Thanks, Deepa. Just going to clarify on a previous question, can a food share apply that provides food relief and doesn't sell food apply, or does a food hub have to sell food? It does have to sell food, yeah. So that's one of our main criteria, is that you do sell fresh produce to your local community. Okay, there's a few more questions coming through. A lot still coming through about the local government areas as well, just clarifying whether certain councils are eligible or not. As we've mentioned, regional and rural LGAs are all included, and only those 6 outer facing Melbourne LGAs are included. So if your local government area is not one of those local government areas, unfortunately, you are not eligible to apply for this grant round. There's a question here about equity. So how is equity taken into account in assessing applications? It's a good question.
I'm very happy to talk about equity any day. So for us, the reason we chose the areas that we've chose are based on equity and wanting to make sure that funding is going to areas that really have been hardest hit. For us, with the hubs as well, we'll be looking at hubs that do have an equity focus. So for hubs that are able to reach the communities, as we mentioned, our primary objective is around increasing accessibility to communities that have been hardest hit or facing the greatest barriers. So we're looking at food hubs who are able to effectively target and work with these groups and demonstrate that they already have connections with these groups. We understand that, you know, everyone has issues around food. There's always multiple barriers and different and complex barriers. But for us, it's not about providing access to those who already have access. It's providing access to those who don't have access or having multiple complex problems that lead to, you know, being unable to access these foods. So equity is at the forefront of this investment and the way that we've designed it and the way that we'll continue assessing and implementing it as well.
Thanks, Deepa. Question around, if there is an existing food hub in the location, will VicHealth consider proposals to create a new one? So any applications that come through that there are already existing food hubs and maybe a lot of other existing programs, will we consider these sorts of applications?
It is about, once again, about need. So is there a need for a second food hub? Perhaps there is, I don't know. And there's also being cautious of what else is happening in the local food system. So, you know, the last thing we want is for investments or anything we're doing, and I'm sure all of you as well, don't want to be putting something somewhere that could potentially have a negative implication for someone else who's a food producer or runs a hub or a market stall as well. So for us, it's about need. If you can demonstrate that that need is there to have another space, then please document that, detail that in your application. But we are looking to you to tell us that.
Yep, and same goes for this question around what geographical area is preferred for a food hub. So a town versus a local government area versus a region. Again, it needs to be one of the eligible local government areas or rural or regional areas, but it's up to that local knowledge to decide where that is in that location as well. Okay, let's have a look what else we've got left. Okay, conscious we've got about 4 minutes left. So there's a question that's coming through about selling fresh produce only, fruit, vegetables, or can value-added local products also be sold? So basically, does it just have to be fresh produce, or can the hub sell other things?
Yeah, the primary objective is around fruit and vegetables, but if the hub chooses to sell other foods, you know, keeping in mind that we're looking at kind of fresh and healthy and locally sourced food, that we weren't, yeah, that's not for us to say what people would like to sell at these hubs, but the primary aim being local fresh fruits and vegetables that are culturally appropriate for the community.
Thanks, Deepa. There's a question here about, can we apply if wanting to do a community garden growing bush tucker ingredients?
Yes, so you could, but only if you're also able to have a method of where you're going to be selling those foods as well. So just remembering the primary objective is around increasing sales, so selling affordable, culturally appropriate, healthy food, and then the other things can sit, all the other things, community programming, all the other work that you want to do in the community garden could sit alongside that, but the primary aim needs to be met in this application process.
Thank you. There's a question here around governance structures. So can the governance structure of the food hub be planned during the first 6 months? If so, how will these applications work basically?
Yes, that, if we understand that people are at different stages of their planning for the food hub, so just include that in your application, what your plans are, what you're thinking about, how you will design your governance structure, what's informed that decision, or where you're leading towards, what's guiding you. Just include that in your application process.
All right, I think we've got time for a couple more questions before we wrap up. Just to clarify, the hub can be focused on one program, for example, only a community meals combined with hands-on cooking classes with a community garden.
So I think this is probably similar to the last question. So your food hub needs to have the primary output of selling fruits and vegetables at an affordable, culturally appropriate, all the things I've been saying. And the other things, the other community programming you do is determined by what your community needs. So it may be cooking classes, it may be community gardens, but that's what your community wants. It could be one thing and not all three of those things, or it could be all three things or four things that you want to do because that's what's being asked for. So it's up to you to tell us what this programming would look like and show that that's what the community wants as well.
Thanks, Deepa. I think we'll take one more question and then we'll wrap it up. I love that there's funding for food hubs, but it seems to be only for communities with existing food hubs. Will this mean that our smaller communities will miss out?
No, they're not for existing food hubs. They are for people that are starting up these spaces as well. And we will be assessing the applications accordingly so that we're taking that into account. We understand that some people will be more established, they'll have things already set in place, so that'll be easier for them, and there'll be newer ones. So we will be looking at those in different ways with different lenses and different assessment criteria. So please still apply if you are got a newer food hub or hoping to establish one. We'd love to hear that as well.
Excellent, thank you. Well, that's all we've got time for. Sorry that we didn't get to go through all the questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along today to our online briefing and question and answer session for the Future Healthy Move the Dial investment, Future Healthy Food Hubs. We do look forward to all your applications coming through. And if your question wasn't answered today, please make sure you have a look at our FAQs on our VicHealth website, where we've answered quite a few of those frequently asked questions. Otherwise, please feel free to email us at healthyfoodsystems@vic.gov.au, and we can answer and follow up on some of your questions that perhaps weren't answered in today's session. So thank you very much and have a great rest of the week. Thank you and goodbye, everyone.